we're going to talk about Bach's arias in the Passion, which are very special. Before we do, I just wanted to set some context. Whereas in Bach's St. John Passion, which he wrote earlier, he pulled together various sources of texts that were already written and used by other composers for the non-biblical text, reflecting on the meaning and so on, used for the arias. In this case, for St. Matthew Passion, he worked with Friedrich Henrici, known as Picander, to develop an original libretto just for Bach to use. And this is important because it gives a unified point of view to the Passion overall, and this is one of the areas where, in exploring it this time in depth for the first time, I discovered some things that I didn't expect to find. First off, the libretto is very much centered around allegories and symbols related to the Hebrew Bible wisdom literature text, the Song of Songs, or Song of Solomon. This is a short book of the Bible which doesn't explicitly refer to the divine, but which has been interpreted by many as a love story between God and God's faithful people, or in the case of Christians later on, reinterpreted as between Christ as the bridegroom and the faithful as the bride. The term for the bride, or the female character in the Song of Songs, is either the daughter of Jerusalem or daughter of Zion. And this reference is used in relatively few other places in the Bible, though it does come up, but really centers in this Song of Songs. And we find throughout the Passion reference to this love story, this love poetry, which seeks to bring together the love of desire, or eros, with unconditional love of agape, and find a union in them, contrary to how in our modern day we tend to separate those two completely and think they can have nothing to do with each other. Well, for Bach, in particular, and his contemporaries, and certainly in this Passion, that is at the center. The sense of love, the combination of desire, of longing, a sense of the feeling of separation between Jesus and the faithful, both as he's going through the Passion and especially at his death, a sense of desiring union, a sense of sympathy on the part of the people, responding in sympathy to Jesus and identification with Jesus, rather than, as is more the case in the St. John Passion, going off and feeling an overwhelming sense of guilt and unworthiness. Here the response is more a sense of how loved the faithful is and how grateful for that love. And the aria that just follows Peter's denial and his weeping bitterly, as we heard in the previous video that the evangelist sung, is a beautiful aria along those lines. Please forgive my dog. So back again. Sorry for that interruption, but these are meant to be informal videos rather than formal setup procedures, and so we're doing them at home, and my dog's particular relationship of desire and eros is the mailman, and when the mailman comes, she always responds, and the mailman always leaves and goes away, only to be longed for and awaited the next day. However, back from the ridiculous to the sublime, in Bach's aria, in response to Peter, that is, taking the voice of Peter and with the identification of the faithful, the text he sets here, the Picander wrote for him, is Erbarme dich, mein Gott, have mercy, my God, meiner Zähren willen, for my tears' sake. Schaue hier, Herz und Auge weint vor dir bitterlich. Look here, my heart and eyes weep bitterly before you. Erbarme dich, mein Gott, meiner Zähren willen. Again, very few words, and the affect or emotion of the aria, and there's usually just one, so that it's portrayed very clearly, is one of loving, seeking of forgiveness and mercy, of sorrow, at the knowledge of one's betrayal, not at the idea that one has made a huge mistake or error that needs to be punished, but a sense of genuine sorrow, such as realizing that you've done something wrong to someone that you love. Now, in talking about the arias, I wanted to talk just in purely musical terms too. The way arias are constructed by Bach is using a form of composition known as a ritornello, where a certain material returns. So music is all about memory, about creating ideas that then are remembered later on and take on additional meaning every time that we hear them. In a Bach aria, most of the ideas of the aria are stated very clearly in the opening instrumental introduction, in this case by the solo violin. And it usually has three major parts. There's usually the opening part, which states a relatively short idea with real clear definition and a clear emotional intent. And in this case, it's this. So that's something that's very easy to remember. The rhythm that is set is related to a very common dance form known at the time as Siciliano, which is pastoral in nature because of the lilting triple division of the beat. Ya da da dee ya da da 1 2 3 1 2 dee dum, and that lends it. The pastoral air is important. It's found elsewhere in other movements as well because that is associated with shepherds, who are associated with sheep, who are associated with lambs. And one of the symbols in Christianity for the sacrifice of Jesus is Jesus as the paschal lamb or sacrificial lamb. Now the middle section of the ritornello tends to be full of a related idea musically with a similar contour but repeated at different levels in a sequence, what's known as a sequence. And here in this particular melody there are two sequences. The first one, I'm sorry, that's the wrong note. So we hear over and over the rhythm, da-dum, da-dum, with that leaning note, or poggiatura as it's called in Italian. Again, lending to the affect, but with a repetitive motion that gives a sense of inevitability and of intensification of that emotion. The next one is even more elaborate, as though his sorrow is becoming more involved. I'm sorry, again. So again, several times repeating the same short ideas to build up their intensity. And then the third part of a ritornello melody is its conclusion or epilogue, which is another cadential figure, which again you'll hear elsewhere in the aria. Again, this has a sequence of its own inside it, but it clearly is meant to bring that ritornello to resolution. Then the singer comes in singing this opening melody. Sometimes they have a different melody, but here it's the same. And carries on, setting the words "have mercy" to that melody over and over.